All right, this project is for Fafferton Manor and Garden. It's in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. There's a link to the property website for it if anyone wants to look at it. My name is Jen Pickering Octor, and my faculty mentor is Corinne Erb. So I have a PhD in environmental engineering from Vanderbilt University, and my formal training before that was earth sciences. I spent 5 years working in corporate energy research in Houston, Texas, and kind of hated it. So in 2021, I quit and moved my family to Wisconsin to be close to my in-laws. And we had a young daughter. My husband and I have always had big gardens wherever we lived, but we lived in the South and it was really easy to sort of produce lots of annual vegetables and pickle and harvest and that sort of thing because the seasons are long, and we didn't have kids. Moving to Wisconsin, the season's very short and we had a newborn, and I got into permaculture initially to try to maximize efficiency in gardening. Basically, I was just looking for how to combine processes so that it was less work, essentially. We have kind of an odd situation. We bought a house in this town called Two Rivers, intending to stay there for a very long time. But after living there for 14 months, we sort of learned that we got into the local government processes and that kind of thing, and learned that the community is very closed-minded, and we actually didn't want to raise our kids there. So we moved to the next town over, bought another house in a different community with a different school district and all that kind of stuff. We didn't sell that first house. So it's the first house is the one that this project is about. And it's actually sort of like a second property, like a vacation home. So our design and vision statement for this property is here. The number one thing we're looking for is health. So I have type 1 diabetes and an autoimmune thyroid disease. Nutrient-dense food and daily activity are really important to managing those illnesses. And secondarily, we also want to model the lifestyle of, working for and caring about your food and engaging with your environment for our community, for our family, for our kids. It's just something that, is important to us as people, and we want to share that with others. And we also think it is sort of like a war chest, as we call it, against future climate change, political instability, wars, that kind of thing. Having your own food sources, or at least the ability to supplement with your own food sources, can't hurt. So our SMART goals for this project are to plant edible perennials over the next 12 months to, a little longer. I have a little bit of a development that's kind of changing our timelines, which is I'm having another baby tonight. Anyway, so timelines are very loose here for us just because of where we're at in life. But we also want to plant other useful perennials that are maybe beautiful but have other stacked functions. So we want things that are medicinal or are good for nutrient cycling, for example, those kinds of plants. We also want to process our food and pet waste from ourselves and from our guests via composting. And then we want to record and think about feedback as well. So here's an overview of the region. Two Rivers is here. This is northeast Wisconsin. We're sticking out into Lake Michigan. Here's kind of a zoomed in version of that. So Two Rivers is this delta that sticks out into Lake Michigan, and that gives us a slightly different microclimate than the rest of the region. We tend to be quite a bit colder in the winter and have a very late arriving summer, but then fall sticks around a little bit longer. So we are zone 5B with temperature dips down to -10, and we have these really long dry winters. We get about 40 inches of snow in winter. And then we have pretty mild summers. Occasionally we reach 85 degrees, but that's rare and only lasts for a day or two. Summers are really short though. We've kind of just warmed up. So it's sort of like mid-June or so into September is our proper growing season. It's quite humid though, and we get a lot of rainfall and that sort of thing. So it has advantages as well. So the most common disasters here are storms and floods. We don't have any history of drought or wildfire or earthquakes or anything like that. There is a nuclear plant up north of our town in this area called Kiwani. It doesn't have a history of, any sort of disasters, and we're not in an earthquake prone environment, but it does exist there. And let's see, the lake effect for our area, because we're on the west side of the lake, what we get is a fall that stays warmer than the surrounding area, but a spring that starts a lot later. So basically winter just lasts forever. And the other thing is that we have very significant temperature contrasts with nearby inland areas. So my husband's parents live inland in Manitowoc over here, and it's only about a 20-minute drive, and we're commonly 10 degrees cooler in Two Rivers than they are there. We do have some nice natural attractions, so it brings tourists to the area. This is Wisconsin's best beach, as it's been voted. There's a state forest here. It's a very natural area. We've got the Ice Age Trail as well. In terms of the demographics, it's a pretty small town. It's almost exclusively white people of like sort of a Catholic conservative mindset. It was originally inhabited by Potawatomi and Menominee people, but there are almost no Native Americans left in the area. And the median age here is 43, and it's skewed heavily because there are a lot of snowbird retirees. So that's the median age. The average is higher. It's kind of an older retirement sort of community. Here's an overview of the sectors. So I already talked about the temperature, but there's just kind of a graph showing, sorry, this text didn't show well, but there's kind of a graph showing, how overcast we are when we have clear skies. We have a pretty steady rate of precipitation that lasts throughout the growing season, which is very nice. It gets a little bit muggy in, kind of July and August, but that's it. The rest of the year is quite dry. And because we run this as a vacation property, we care about the tourism score. So basically we get tourism in July and August. One of the things that's really been both a blessing and a curse here is how windy it is. So the average wind speed is, something like 15 miles an hour, which is quite high. Some of the human created sectors we have. So our nearest neighbors are supportive and awesome. We love them. But there's a city law that bans food production in front yards. And in general, the public here is very lawn loving. People really support the use of fertilizers and things to make lawns artificially green. Mosquitoes and gnats are big here. There's a lot of water, so it's, kind of ripe for bugs. And you just see pesticide signs everywhere. They spray things all the time. It's generally politically conservative. So this is kind of the heart of Trump country or Trump territory. Otherwise, our property is mortgaged. So financially, we need to at least break even by whatever pursuits we're doing there on rental income, or we would have to sell it because we can't afford to keep it if it's not self-sustaining its own, financial resources. One nice thing about the area is that climate change is not really a super big deal here because we're already in a cool environment and we don't have a lot of natural disasters. We don't have to deal with fires or anything like that. So we're cognizant of it, but it's not as much of a concern here as it is in a lot of other places in the world. All right, here we are looking at a map of the neighborhood, and here are neighborhood level sectors. So in red over here is the property, and these are streets right here. So we live in our property is in this little block of 7 houses together on this kind of grassy knoll next to the East Twin River. You can see the contours in the background. It's a very, very gentle slope down toward the river. And we get really strong dry winds from the north through most of winter. And humid winds come off the lake in summer. And the lake is south of us here. We do have some street traffic, but it's pretty minimal. And the speed limit's 25 miles an hour and people tend to observe it. Resources on site. I mentioned that we have a lot of wind. So here's another wind graph. And I just put a few other cities on there so you can see how much windier we are relative to other places. We also have a lot of sunlight in the summer and steady rainfall across the growing season. So, we have gutters and downspouts in place, but we have a nice water balance. So we don't really have areas that flood or pond, and we also don't really have to do much hose watering. It's just kind of a self-sustainable system in terms of water. We have a recreational fire pit. We have an abundance of maple and birch leaves and lots of deciduous and cedar tree trimmings. We have income from the short-term rental, and we have skilled neighbors and family. There are some surplus items. Wastes we have to deal with are mostly dog poop. And we do have like a lot of recycling and that sort of thing from guests staying here. So here's the base map zoomed into the property. The physical boundaries are shown. This is the road. The red is the outline of the actual property that is ours. We've got a stone fence that the neighbors have separating us there. And otherwise, this is our driveway. So essentially, when we bought the house, everything was the domestic zone. So I don't have a before map of zones, but here's how we envision it when we're done with it. There's kind of a couple of domestic zones, a forage zone, a little orchard, and a small farm zone. Our existing water systems are here. The star is, we actually have a historical hand pump in our basement that functions. So it's hooked up to city water, but we have this secondary water source if we ever needed to use it. And then otherwise, these are downspouts that exist on the property. And the plan for the water systems is to move those downspouts, connect the flexible drains to them and bury them, and build berms and swales to plant in, so that on the dry side of our house particularly, and then in the sunny part of our house, plants do get at least some subsurface water flow. We also plan to and have already built a greenhouse. We want to put gutters on that, collect that water into a rain barrel, just as another source, of water. We do not have any gray water collection planned, and that's purposeful. The house is used by guests, and we don't have an ability to control their soap content or anything like that. So we have actually just selected to not worry about the gray water. Here are our edges and microclimates. So we've got hardscaping on all four sides. We have a driveway to the north, street to the west, a stone and now a chain link fence to the south, and then this building, which is our neighbor's building, and a chain link fence to the east over here. The house itself, and then the concrete sidewalks, here concrete sidewalks in that kind of tan color, those are also another edge. Otherwise, we have edges that occur in transition at these sunny and shady boundaries. So my microclimates here, we've got moist shade in this sort of turquoise color. We've got dry shade in this darker blue color, full sun in the orange color, and the green is a cool kind of part sun environment. Here's a map of the paths, patterns, flows, and what we call neighbor pockets. So parking, usually people, ourselves even, park on the street or in the driveway, and these paths take you up to the front porch. Sometimes we park back here in the driveway, and there's a garage entry here that we'll enter into. So this is a side patio here where there's a side door, and we often eat outside. So there's a door here leading out to the patio, and then sometimes we'll walk to the front yard or the backyard. And then there's a garage door, pedestrian garage door entry here that again, we'll walk out into the backyard for. Our neighbor pockets, as we call them, are these two little areas right here where there's no trees or barriers that block us. So we frequently kind of come to these three little areas and meet our neighbors for a chat. And then there's this circuit back here, which is this area is kind of where dogs roam. So we do like a poop cleanup circuit back there. Here's our built environment combined with a waste and nutrient map. So the pathway, we built this pathway that connects the driveway to the front of the house because it was previously just grass. We plan to build an arbor support for a clematis with some benches on either side. We built this fence in this purple dashed line, chain link fence there, and then it's also fenced off here, and that just keeps dogs kind of contained in this area. We've got a greenhouse, which we built last year and into the beginning of this year, and that hosts some of our waste and nutrient cycling. So I'll switch to talking about that. So these green things in here are hot frog tumblers, and those are Basically, we only have a few warm enough months to really get compost going. So we have these hot tumblers that are for cold climates, and we keep them inside the greenhouse to give them an extra layer of warmth. And that's where we put food scraps and things that are harder to break down or get smelly quickly. We have also a doggy waste digester back here, and that we just kind of dug in a hole, put a perforated trash can down into the ground. We put the dog poop in there, and over time it breaks down. We add some greens and nitrogen and that sort of thing. Over time it breaks down and it just kind of, drains away, and we don't have to take it out to the garbage. We've also got an area where we have large debris compost. So these are like our tree trimmings and that kind of thing. And those break down into a leaf mold, and we don't really use them on site, so we trade them for labor and that sort of thing. We've also recently just put in a recreational fire pit, which we use for biochar to add to the compost. Here are our plants, trees, and gardens. So the plan for the design is to have, we'll start up here with a berry hedge wind block. Because we have that really strong wind coming from the north, we have a berry hedge wind block enclosing what will ideally become a mushroom garden and a shady herb spiral around the base of this birch tree. We've got some stilbe and aesthetic sort of plants over here. This welcoming, I call this my lawn kidney. We want to keep one kidney shaped bit of grass in the front yard, just to kind of keep the perception for everyone that we don't have a front yard garden and we have a bit of grass on site. And then around that are pollinators and medicinal aesthetic plants. This one is actually a sunny herb garden, so I'm hoping for oregano and thyme and rosemary and that kind of stuff. To the north of the house, we have a tiered berry bush hedge. So I've got things going from sort of tall, medium to small. And the idea here is that these are all kind of wind resistant, they're edible, and I also hope that they will add some insulation to this north side of our house. There's a few more berry bushes we've planted back here. We've got comfrey stock, which we keep back here by the dog area. I like to use that for mulch and, comfrey tea and that kind of thing. So I like just having that around. This is an asparagus bed that we have. I started from seed and they're establishing now. And that's just used, this is like kind of the neighbor's debris pile back here, this gray rectangle, and that just kind of blocks some of that. A couple of filbert trees here, a couple of columnar apple trees here, and a Madison peach tree here make up our orchard. For technology, transportation, and energy, we have some wind power to the garage. So these purple hexagons are these helix wind turbines, triple helix wind turbines. And I don't have the skills for these yet, but we're hoping to learn that. We want to have one that this area back here is very windy, even though there's a cedar hedge here, it doesn't matter. It's very, very windy. We want these to power an eventual hot tub inside the greenhouse in winter. And then these would power the garage. The garage has electricity to it, but it's not enough. We have a space heater in there that we turn on when we're trying to work on projects, and the space heater blows the circuit. So we want to supplement that. Social and invisible structures that we have to deal with. The front yard cannot look like it's a food producing garden, hence the sort of, blocking and that kind of thing, blocking our mushroom garden. Ultimately, we would love to get rid of Airbnb as a platform for booking, and over time, we would like to engage the community businesses to generate guests that way. We want to maintain our neighbor pockets over here on the south side, and then we do need to keep kind of a grassy area because dog kids and families frequent the property, so we need either grass or clover or an area for them to run and use the bathroom. Now, our main source of income is short-term rental guests, so it needs to be available for others to stay here at least during the summer season, which means that all the work we do is in the shoulder seasons. So here's our implementation phase 1. These have already been built over the last year, and these are plants that are currently establishing. So we have some of our front yard plants. We have the Madison peach tree, asparagus, and comfrey. And then socially, we established a strong relationship with our neighbors. Phase 2 is this year and into the next year. We've added some pathways. We want to add some more plants. We planted some trees on Mother's Day this year, recently added the biochar pit. The greenhouse is done, and we've put in some furniture there. And then ultimately, in a couple of years into the future, we want to establish some of these longer term things like the mushroom patch, the berry hedges, and the sunny herb garden, for example. So as far as our maintenance plan goes, this is going to lose luster for us if we make it into too much of a calendar. I am not the kind of person that loves that stuff. So we're just going to say that we'll plant 10 to 20 plants each spring and fall during our shoulder season visits. We'll do deadheading and that kind of stuff, but otherwise we outsource. We have a local company that mows the lawn, a neighbor that cleans the house and flips it over for guests. And then as far as weeds, we don't even weed. We generally embrace them for their diagnostic and amendment properties. And so far it hasn't been a problem. I've included some observation and site assessment notes at the back of this, which I will not go over for the presentation, but they're in there. And then here's my final evaluation statement. And with that, thanks. And permaculture is great.